Okay, well, welcome if you're joining us online this morning, and a massive welcome to the rest of you. Hey, for those of us here at Central who are sitting downstairs here, why don't we just turn and look up at the balcony and give them a bit of a wave as well. Hello, balcony. Good to see you this morning. And again, just a huge welcome if you're joining us online. Happy Easter to you all. For those of us that were in the room, that song. There was a lyric in that song that we just sang about, by this you will, was it? By this I'll reach home. By this I'll reach home. And as we sang that song, those lyrics, oh, my heart just leapt. It's by him we're going to be going home. Hopefully some of us not too soon. But, and I want to say this, we're going to talk a little bit about that. Because I think for lots of us, there's a nervousness or even a fear about that. And today, Easter Sunday, speaks directly right into the very deepest of fears about this life and the one to come. We need to know and we need assurance, don't we? Morgan Freeman asked this very question, and they asked 22 people in 22 countries the question, would there ever be peace on earth? Let's find out.
War and peace, I think they're binaries. I don't think you can contemplate the one without the other.
Yes, isn't that the giant question?
Depends.
Credo che bisognerebbe prima chiedersi se sia possibile la pace dentro noi stessi.
世界和平有冇可能？我覺得唔係太可能嘅嘢嚟嘅。
Yes, peace on earth if there's unity in all of us.
Ik ben bang van niet. Het zit in de aard van de mens om oorlog te maken.
많은 어려움이 있겠지만 가능하다고 생각합니다.
Yes.
Nee. J'ai l'impression que tant qu'il y aura des hommes, il n'y aura jamais de paix.
Φυσικά και είναι εφικτή. Απλώς πρέπει να κατανοήσεις πρώτα την αγάπη.
Теоретически, конечно, возможен, а практически, мне кажется, нет.
Teško, ali nadajmo se da jeste.
Yo creo que la paz es posible si colaboramos todos.
Yes, I do believe peace on earth is really possible.
冇可能，永遠都唔會發生。
Tak, jest możliwe.
No, non è possibile la pace nel mondo.
Diría que es casi imposible que haya paz en la Tierra, porque las opiniones humanas nos llevan a discutir y dejar de pelear en parte sería perder nuestra humanidad.
Sì, sempre.
No. Prima pensate a far pace con mia madre e me e poi pensiamo alla pace del mondo.
As long as people they can get together, there'll be peace and harmony.
Yani şu sistem içinde mümkün değil.
Yes. 不可能吧?
Jest możliwy, wszystko zależy od ludzi.
Moguće mir, ali mi ga ne želimo očigledno.
Постигането на световен мир е възможен, ако хората изчезнат от земята. I don't think so. Too many egos, too many people, too many weapons.
If love is equally distributed to all of the world, peace can be shared.
If there's peace, you're preparing for war. And if there's war, you're fighting for peace. Wasn't that cool? Say yes. I'm not going to agree.
It's a good question though, isn't it? Is it possible? Let me ask you that today. Is it possible? I love that moment when the guy said, but first help me make peace with mum. You know, one of the other guys said, the nature of mankind is to make war. There's something at our core that's missing and gone wrong. I love this one. As long as there is men, there can be no peace. I think that's a comment. Was it said by a man? If it was all ladies, would there be more peace? Do you know what? I've got to be honest. I think I probably agree. I think I do. Too many egos. Oh my word. How many of us experience that when you're in a room where there's too many egos? Peace is very difficult. And then maybe we need to understand love. And then there was the big question of we need to understand peace first for ourselves. We need peace on the inside before we can even contemplate it on the outside. So we're asking a question, is there possibly peace out there? It seems to rise that we need peace in here. How do we get the peace in here? Well, guys, we're going to read from John chapter 20 this morning. We heard about the first morning, and I want to just talk about that first evening. The disciples are hiding in fear. They certainly haven't got peace. Let's read from John chapter 20, verse 19. It says, on the evening of that first day of the week, the disciples were together with the doors locked for fear of the Jewish leaders. And Jesus came and stood among them and said, peace be with you. And after he said this, he showed them his hands and side. And the disciples were overjoyed and when they saw the Lord. And again, Jesus said, peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you. And with that, he breathed on them and said, receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone's sins, their sins are forgiven. If you do not forgive, they're not. And then a little bit later on, a week later, when Thomas wasn't in the room, and then a week later, he's now in the room. In verse 26, it says, a week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. And though the doors were locked, a week later, they're still in a locked room. They're still hiding. Jesus came and stood among them and said, peace be with you. And then he said to Thomas, put your finger here, see my hands, reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe. And Thomas said, my Lord and my God. And Jesus told him, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. You know, when my kids were young, we loved to read, the Narnia stories or whatever. And with children, it's like they step into the story, don't they? It's like you open the page and it's like they just get in and they're amongst the characters. Sometimes we read the Bible from a distance. We need to read the Bible by sort of stepping into the locked room and becoming one of the disciples and understand what on earth is going on. Because they've just witnessed Jesus being crucified. Their entire lives have been turned upside down. And the reality is they've been driven into a locked room by fear. And it's an understandable fear, isn't it? Because the fear is this, what they've done to Jesus, the powers that be, what they've done to Jesus, it could easily do to them and they could be next. I think I'd be in the room. I think I'd be in a locked room. How many of us, when fear comes knocking, where do we find ourselves? We find ourselves hiding, do we not? When fear rises, what do we do with it? And what we see here in this passage and in this moment is a group of disciples who have been faithful for 3 years, but their lives have had the rug pulled from under them, and now they are hiding in fear. There's genuine fear knocking around. The fear of what the outside world thinks and what the outside world might do. But I also want to suggest they're also in that room because there's an inner fear. It's not just about what's going on outside, it's also about what's going on inside. Think about the Peters of this world. They've just heard the possibility that Jesus is alive. I don't know about you, but I know I live with shame at times when I overpromise and underdeliver. And so here is a group of men and women who probably feel shame and guilt as well. And they're locked in. They're locked up in a room. But what do we see? What do we see in this moment? Is that we see a risen Jesus coming through the walls. The walls that have been erected, the walls that they're hiding behind. Nothing can hold the risen Jesus back. And he comes right into the heart, right through the walls, and says, peace be with you. Wow, you know what? That greeting was way more in this moment than just a shalom, my friends. This is a deep, deep kind of moment of, yes, I want shalom, peace, harmony to you, my friends and brothers. That's the first thing he says to them. He doesn't say, I told you so. Or, where have you been? What are you doing? Why are you hiding? No, first thing he says to them is, peace be with you. What a picture for us. Peace has come to a room full of fear, full of shame and guilt. I wonder what fears we're living with today. What are we afraid of? What holds us frozen? Just take a second. What fear or shame holds us in a room where we desperately don't want to be in? Where we know that there is way more to life than just this, sitting. When I say fear, what comes? Because what I see here is a Jesus, a resurrected Jesus who comes in his personal presence, bringing all of the forgiveness and the power of what happened on Friday and the possibility of a new beginning on Sunday. And that promise comes right into that room. Freedom, liberty, and peace is right in front of them. The hope of this morning's message is that whatever fear that seeks to hold us back, hold us down, keep us locked up, he's come to speak into. Peace, my friends. It's amazing. And so what I see here is in this 3 times he says, peace be with you. I think the first time when he says that, it is about peace into the current crisis, the current fears that you are experiencing. And I think he wants to say that to us today, whether we're online or here this morning. The risen Jesus says to you, I am peace for you. I have bought peace. I have dealt with the enemy, death, and all fears. The source of fear I've dealt with, and I am peace, and I am here. I want some of that. I know Jesus. I gave my life to him when I was 17. I experienced the most remarkable peace in my depths of my soul when I connected with God in that moment, and something happened. I came alive. But I think for some of us and for lots of us, this is a journey. This is a picture of what God wants to do on a daily basis for each and every one of us. Easter Sunday is happening every Sunday, every day for each and every one of us, because he's alive and well and he can come into our rooms and into our lives in every situation to deal with every fear. That's got to be worth celebrating. That's got to be worth receiving. I don't know where you're at this morning. I don't know where some of your journeys are at, what the questions you have about life. But what I'm reading here and in my own personal experience is that the thing that humanity has looked for forever is a sense of deep peace. And we look for it all over the place and in all sorts of corners. And it never seems to satisfy except when we meet living peace, resurrected peace. I want to present that to you today and say there really is peace on earth. But it begins with us, and we can have it on the inside with us. So that's what I'm seeing there. I also see in verse 21, he says to you, again, Jesus says, peace be with you. And then he says, as the Father sent me, I am sending you. Isn't that interesting? The peace I give you, I want you to give away. A couple of years ago, you know when you have one of those things where you're like, I just would love one of those. And one of those things that I wanted was a MacBook Air. There are other kind of PCs you can get, by the way. But I was like, I want a Mac. I'd love a MacBook. And you have like I am not a materialistic person really. And I just did a little prayer. I was like, Lord, I'd love that. Is it possible? Throwaway prayer. 3 weeks, maybe a couple of weeks later, a mate of mine rocked up, and they were closing his office or something, and he'd been given a new laptop, and he walked in and he went, hey, James, I just thought about you the other day. I thought you might want this. And he handed me a MacBook Air. Now you're all going to go away going, I want. That is not the message today. But this is just one of my little stories. It did actually happen. Some of your eyebrows are like, oh, I've got a list, Lord. I don't think it works quite like that, by the way. But anyway, I got this MacBook, and I was like, yeah, brilliant. And I was like, oh, this is amazing, I was working on it. I had it for about a month. And then I was down seeing a pal down south, and I had my MacBook Air with me. And I was watching his son, who was at college, and he was doing like sound stuff, and he was doing it on this old laptop. And it just wasn't working, and he was really frustrated with it all. And just as I'm watching, and I went to bed, and I went upstairs, and I got into bed because I was staying over with them, I just felt the Lord say, give it to him. Anybody else experience this? The gift that you've always wanted. I've got it. And then, yay, give it. Oh. And for that evening, I was like, and then initially I was like, yes, Lord, your servant is willing. But the reality was, when I woke up in the morning, because I sort of promised that evening, I was like, yes, I'll do that. I woke up, I was like, the reality of giving this thing away, I actually got in the car and I started to drive away. And then I actually drove all the way home. And by the time I got home, I was really convicted. Why didn't I just give it to him? So I actually packaged it up and I sent it to him. Do you know what I missed? I missed the reaction on his face. I was gutted. Because his dad phoned me, and then he phoned me. But his dad first phoned me, and then he phoned me, and he was like so thankful. I'm not saying any of this to make myself sound really holy. Trust me, my halo slipped a long time ago. And it's not about the list, but it is about what you receive, freely give. When we've been forgiven, let's become a forgiving people. When we've received peace and assurance deep on the inside of our lives because of who Jesus is, guess what? Let's just give it away. When we're in the office and there isn't peace in the office, we are called to bring peace into the office. When things are going awry, I know peace on the inside. I don't need to be all panicked and stressed about this situation. And you could look at your own lives and you look at all the situations around you. When we get peace in here, we can go and give it. And let me tell you, when you suddenly become the answer to somebody's issue, when you suddenly stand between two warring factions, whatever's going on there, and you bring peace, let me tell you, there's something beautiful about the reward in it. Jesus said, and as the Father has sent me, I am now sending you. Listen, the peace that we get, it's not just for the present crisis, but it actually is about purpose. We become carriers. We give away airbook, left, right, and center. People taste the peace that's in us. And then they end up having to ask a whole bunch of other questions. Isn't that part of the gospel? And so what I see here is I am sending you. Peace I give you. Now go be a peacemaker. I love the work of the street pastors. You know, I love what they do. If you don't know this particular charity, they go out onto the streets all over our nation, and in particular here in Aberdeen. And they often stand, you know, as the church in volatile situations, standing between people who are falling out. I mean, I've been out with them, and I've seen marriages imploding, and street pastors being amongst it, bringing what? Peace. Vulnerable people left in situations where they are vulnerable and scared and full of fear, and guess what? A street pastor rocks up. What do they bring? Oh, assurance and peace. This is what is happening in the room. Receive the peace, go be the peace. Love it. And then in verse 26, we get the third peace be with you. And here is Thomas, because he feels, I mean, he's had serious FOMO, hasn't he? He missed it. He missed the first episode. And now he's in the room. And now Jesus comes to alleviate his doubts. And he gets a chance to not only see the marks, but an invitation to put his hands and touch the reality. I want to suggest in this third moment, this is the peace, a peace for the ever after. Because what comes through those walls is what has been promised to you and me. In the book of Corinthians, St. Paul says that the risen Jesus, the resurrected Jesus, is the first fruits of what's to come. So what comes through that wall on that morning or on that evening is a representation of what is happening, going to happen for all eternity for you and me. What we see in this person of Jesus coming through this wall. Can we just step into the story again? Because what do you see? I'll tell you what I see. I see a man who's both material and immaterial. I mean, this is like Star Trek. I mean, he comes through the wall immaterial, and then he's material. What's that about? That's wild. He's going to them, hey, give me a piece of food. I'll just prove to you that this is not ghosty. And there he is having a little, bit of fish. Well, this is a new body. This is Jesus, but not as we know it. Would you agree? I don't know about you, but what I see here is a moment of a future arriving in the present. This is physical, a physical body, a physical new body that isn't governed by earthly physics, because it's a body that's governed by heavenly physics. Wild. Because it's a body that's been made for the ever after. And so when we look at the risen Jesus, we look at the ever after. I don't know what you think life after death is going to be like. I look around this room, and I've done a lot of funerals in the last year. But I get asked a lot of questions about death and life and what's next? I'll tell you what's next. This is what's next. This picture of Jesus coming through the wall, standing in front of his disciples, is a visual promise of what we are going to have if you know him. A new body. That's pretty cool. I don't know, but I'm looking around the room. Some of you are like, yeah, I'm receiving that. This body is a bit dysfunctional. I had a little holiday with some friends, did some snowboarding. I've snowboarded for 20 plus years. When I was in my 20s, I could go all week, dance all night, go again, no problem. By day 3, I was like, yeah, this body's not working like it used to, Lord. I'm nudging Tor going, I don't know if I can make the 9 o'clock lift. I think I'll stay in bed another hour. I never work like that. When I see snow, I am committed. I'm up at 7:30. I'm stretching out. I'm ready to go. Oh, I need a body, a new one soon. All joking aside, some of us, hey, maybe closer to that moment than, I don't know. I don't know what the plans are. Some of us are older, some of us are younger, but none of us know the exact moment when we transcend from this earthly life into the ever after. And if you're wondering, oh my gosh, that actually brings fear into my life. I'm not sure about that. I'm nervous about that. Can I say to you today, this is the Jesus that comes through all the fears and the walls, and he says, hey, this is what I promise for you if you know me. New life, new body. Wow. Peace for the ever after. I love that. But not only that, here's one for you. I've been pondering this, and I've been reflecting on it and hanging out in it. The marks of the cross are on Jesus' body. The wounds are still evident in the ever after body. The cost of the cross is being celebrated in his physical body. Wow! No Photoshop, no Instagram, AI, let's get rid of those marks because they're ugly. They weren't Photoshopped out. You ever thought about why? Hold on a minute, I thought we got a perfect body in heaven. Perfection looks very different in the ever after, because it seems like the perfection of the ever after is a reflection of our lives on earth as well. What we did with this life. It seems like, let's think about it, the cost of obeying his Father cost him physical suffering. And so he has nail holes and a pierced side, and his body was quite broken. And yet, when he comes through that wall, a brand new, restored, renewed, like amazing body for the ever after, those marks of life and obedience are on him. I think twofold. Here's some thoughts. Number one, they're there because they're the gateway to everlasting. Only he, and knowing him. And so they're a great reminder for all of us. It's the cross and the resurrection that gives us the ever after. But I wonder if there is a principle at work. Because if the marks of an obedient life were found in Jesus' body, are the marks of an obedient life our lives? Will they be marked? Will somehow they be visible in our resurrected bodies? My friend Dishan, who's just the most remarkable guy, has a scar down his face where he stood up, a mob chased him because they knew he was a Christian, and he stood and tried to bring peace to them, and they macheted him. And in his defense, he put his arms up, and he's got massive machete scars. He nearly died. That scar is still evident. It's faded. I think about him, and I think, in the resurrection ever after, will he have the scar? I think he will. Because I think it's beautiful. And I think God sees it as a mark of beauty and obedience. You see, the ever after looks different. Or my other friend, maybe it's about hidden costs, who served Jesus and still is serving Jesus, and twice he nearly got married. But in his heart of hearts, he was like, Lord, I promised to give myself to the service of your kingdom, and I know that this is just for him. He said, I knew that I couldn't do it. I couldn't marry him. That's a cost. Because he's given his life, 50, 60 years, to seeing the kingdom come on earth. That's not everybody's cost, but it was his. Would that be evident in some way in the ever after? I think so. Let me just read. The reason why I'm saying this is because St. Paul in Corinthians says this, and I think this is a question lots of us ask. What will it be like? What will our bodies be like? Someone will ask, how are the dead raised? What kind of body will they come in? How foolish, he says. What you sow does not come to life unless it dies. When you sow, you do not plant the body that will be, but just the seed. The seed. Our lives today are a seed for the ever after. And he goes on to say, so it will be with the resurrection of the dead. The body, our lives, that is sown perishable is raised imperishable. It is sown in dishonor, in other words, in imperfection, but it is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness, in humility and transparency, and it is raised in power. It is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body. It seems like what comes to life in the ever after is what dies. What will be raised is what has been sacrificed. What is and has been temporary will become permanent. We live in these material, broken, physical bodies, but how we live in them is what is perhaps displayed in the next. And Paul goes on to speak of crowns and wreaths and rewards. And what we see is new bodies and new lives. Perfect peace. Jesus promises in the current crisis and in our fears today. He promises perfect peace, that we then would receive it and give it and become peacemakers. And I think in this room, in this locked room, the lads and the ladies that were present get a picture of a peace that's for everybody who knows him forever and ever. That's wild, isn't it? I mean, we're covering all the bases today. And as I was prepping this, I have fears. Some you'll know about, some you definitely won't know about. Some of us today, the thing about dying is a real deal. It's like that. I deliberately don't think about it very often for some of us. It's the one thing we can't avoid. And it's the one thing Jesus Christ promises. To know him, there's peace in the ever after. Hey, why don't we stand? Let me pray for us. Band's going to come and lead us in worship a little bit more. And then we're going to have a time of ministry. And then we're going to baptize Carl. I don't know what your expectation was this morning of an Easter Sunday. Was it going to be rabbits and Easter eggs? That's all nice. But we got something way better. Perfect peace, shalom to you and me from the ever after, forever lasting time. I love that. Holy Spirit, we thank you that you're here with us. And Jesus, just as you breathed on the disciples that day, I pray and ask that you would do that to us this morning, wherever we're at. Whatever the situation we find ourselves in, whether we feel that fear has got a hold of us and is holding us, I want to specifically pray today. Jesus, would you come and into that situation and breathe peace and hope. And for any of us where the fear really does circle around dying, would you come? Stretch out your hands and visit them today.